2020, the year in Coachella Valley. It started with continued growth and optimism for a new decade. But soon, the effects of a worldwide pandemic took hold. School students were sent home. Businesses closed. Wildfires raged. Social unrest and protests revealed a deeply divided nation. As many died from the coronavirus, the heroes of a pandemic stood up. This is 2020, the year in Coachella Valley. Now, here's Karen Devine and Jeff Stahl.
Hello, I'm Jeff Stahl.
And I'm Karen Devine. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of News Channel 3 2020, the year in the Coachella Valley.
I don't think anyone would argue that this has been a year like no other in any of our lifetimes.
But the year started like any other. In fact, when the ball dropped in Times Square at midnight on January 1st, there was a wave of optimism as the new decade was about to begin, with people hopeful about the possibilities and opportunities ahead. The year kicked off like many years before in the Valley as Palm Springs rolled out the red carpet for some of the top names in Hollywood. Adam Driver, Quentin Tarantino, and J-Lo were just a few of the well-known celebrities honored during the 2020 Palm Springs International Film Festival. And just a few weeks later, the newly rebranded American Express golf tournament teed off, bringing in bigger crowds as they continued with their fan experience, adding 2 nights of free concerts. Friday night, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Stevie Nicks took to the stage, performing in front of an estimated 20,000 fans. And the crowd came back Saturday night to hear country music star Luke Bryan. American golfer Andrew Landry won the tournament, taking home $1.2 million. Now, February in the Valley is historically one of the busiest months as some of the top tourist draws like Modernism Week, Tour de Palm Springs, and the Riverside County Fair National Date Festival bring in people from across the globe. And some star power showed up to help save the Plaza Theater in Palm Springs in February. Nancy Sinatra headlined a sold-out fundraiser to restore the historic building to its glory. And after a 3-year absence, Air Force One once again landed in the Coachella Valley as President Trump arrived to attend a campaign fundraiser in Rancho Mirage. Thousands lined roadways to greet the president as the campaign season was kicked into high gear. A few weeks later, we went to the polls as California moved up its primary. And in March, the sweet sounds of music played on as the Warburton tournament got underway. But little did we know the Warburton would be the last live performance and fundraiser to bring in crowds to the Coachella Valley. And then the ball dropped. A little-known virus called the coronavirus, or COVID-19, started to march across the globe.
Yeah, stories of deaths, very sick people, and lockdowns spread. First from the Wuhan region of China, where that deadly coronavirus was first detected, then on to Italy and the rest of Europe. The news grew more urgent each day and touched closer and closer to home. January 29th, the State Department chartered a plane flying up to 240 U.S. citizens back from China to the March Air Reserve Base in Riverside.
There's a lot about this virus that we don't know.
There, they would quarantine until being cleared and allowed to leave February 11th. Here in the desert, with building concern, on March 8th, organizers canceled the BNP Paribas Open in Indian Wells. That shocking announcement coming the eve of its first day of play and making this health crisis suddenly very real. City leaders noted a significant source of revenue for shops, hotels, and restaurants in the area would be lost, and saying that the move could cost the Coachella Valley $375 million in lost revenue. That would only mark the beginning in a wave of closures. The World Health Organization officially declaring COVID-19 a global pandemic on March 11th.
We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
A few days later, the quiet rumblings became stark realities. Coachella and Stagecoach, the massive music festivals and local economic drivers, were first rescheduled to October, then ultimately canceled by county health orders in June due to growing concerns COVID-19 could worsen in the fall. Desert residents started seeing long lines at Costco and other stores as people stocked up on, of all things, teepee and other essentials. All public and private schools were ordered closed by Riverside County's health officer, Cameron Kaiser, March 13th. Students thought they'd only be going home for a long spring break. Little did they know many would never get to say goodbye to their friends and classmates. An initial 3-week lockdown to flatten the curve began to take effect, shutting down many businesses, casinos, and, well, just about everything. Gyms, restaurants, movie theaters. Only essential businesses, such as grocery and big box retailers, were allowed to remain open. An initial testing site at Southwest Church in Indian Wells moved to the fairgrounds in Indio, set up as a permanent COVID-19 testing location, seeing long lines of cars as people rushed to find out if they were positive. March 25th, National Guardsmen also arrived at the fairgrounds to set up a mobile field medical unit in case cases surged and hospitals were overwhelmed. It's remained mainly unused since. Meanwhile, the Find Food Bank saw increasingly larger requests for help as people out of work lined up in search of food to feed their families. The virus in nursing homes became a major public health concern as elderly people are highly susceptible. April 8th, Palm Desert's Manor Care took in some of the 84 people evacuated from a Riverside Rehab and Nursing Center when staffers there failed to go to work. Dozens of patients and staff here and at other local nursing centers would go on to contract the virus. May 8th, county supervisors pushed back against state and public health orders.
So if we unite, right, here have a unification and pushing back with thresholds that make sense for us, right, because one size does not fit all.
The rejection defined orders closing short-term rental homes and golf courses. Drawing the most controversy was a board decision to strongly recommend wearing face masks and social distancing, but not making it mandatory. It was also in early May, the Desert Ice Castle announced its permanent closure. That would mark the first of what would become a lengthy list of local businesses simply unable to survive the financial damages of the pandemic and shutdown orders. In a November report, the I-Team discovered at least 40 Valley businesses that had closed within the past 8 months. In late May, the state created a 4-stage reopening plan, stage 1 through 4, to slowly and carefully allow businesses to reopen as conditions improved. Governor Newsom converted to a 4-tiered color-coded plan in late August to more clearly define the metrics required to achieve reopening goals, although both systems spelled long-range closures for any large gatherings.
2020 has been a roller coaster ride for our businesses, some having to close their doors permanently.
News Channel 3's Caitlin Thrope brings us a look back at all the ups and downs.
Throughout most of 2020, business owners in the Coachella Valley, like right here in Old Town La Quinta, have had to really adapt and deal with major changes on short notice.
It has been a roller coaster. We've been up and down, several closures and back open again.
The ride started in March with the California stay-at-home order limiting restaurants to takeout. Gyms and theaters closed their doors.
It's really hard to stomach. It hurts.
Soon, changes were underway to safely reopen.
We want our businesses to reopen, and we know they're going to need help reopening.
Businesses got innovative to stay afloat.
Now with the restrictions of just having the patio open, we're down to way less than 25% of what we would normally be doing right now.
To help restaurants expand outdoor dining, Palm Canyon in Palm Springs was closed to traffic in September, leading to mixed reactions.
The businesses that are in the closure area are concerned that they might lose their, that they're going to lose their parking and that they might lose some foot traffic.
We visited Zobo and Meesters in Cathedral City as they made their final meals.
We're missing about half our customers ever since the COVID-19 restrictions went into effect, and we're just losing money every month.
Now they are closed for good.
It's horrible that it's happening to so many people. I've watched a lot of businesses, not even restaurants, go under around here in the plaza, and it's really unfortunate to see all these dark building spaces that used to be full.
Meanwhile, hair and nail salons met changing restrictions, as did gyms, many moving workouts outdoors. Early fall brought hope as Riverside County moved to the red tier.
I'm getting a lot of comments saying thanks for opening up, thanks for surviving.
1 month later, the county reverted to the purple tier and restricted even more on November 19th with a 10 p.m. curfew.
Just started to get our feet back under us, sort of.
Having to close at 10 o'clock, it's just going to kill our business.
In the final month of 2020, one more drop on the roller coaster, a regional stay-at-home order.
If the pandemic is going to last longer, well, we're going to have to work harder. One day it's going to be over. The rest is history, you know. We look forward to the better future.
The hope of a new year is something some of these business owners are holding on to. In La Quinta, I'm Caitlin Thrope, News Channel 3.
So many of those struggling businesses. It's going to be an interesting new year. Let's hope they make it. Through it all, KESQ has worked to support our local businesses. Right now, we have a free and it's easy to use tool to find local offerings through cvlocallinks.com. You can also see how businesses are making sure customers stay safe.
Coachella Valley families were all impacted by the unprecedented shutdown of schools this year. As News Channel 3's Madison Weil has reported, throughout the pandemic, teachers, students, and parents alike were resilient and creative in making the school year possible.
This was an incredibly challenging year for our local schools. Campuses like this, normally filled with students, were instead empty, eerily quiet for the majority of 2020. All three of our local school districts shutting down early in the pandemic, and all three immediately searching for creative solutions, making a commitment to continue providing meals for students.
We're going to do everything we can to make sure everybody's fed.
Palm Springs Unified School District packing up sack lunches and delivering them on bus routes to students at home.
Operation Meals on Wheels. Here we go.
In all three districts providing meal pickup locations for parents.
It's our responsibility.
Teachers going above and beyond to make sure students felt some sense of normalcy. There were virtual spirit days and classroom competitions.
So today's Crazy Hair Day.
And then there were the seniors, the class of 2020, missing out on spring graduation traditions. In lieu of a ceremony, a drive-by diploma pickup for most. Come fall, back to school season came with its own set of new challenges. In October, a COVID outbreak reported at the CVUSD offices in Thermal. Some schools discussed the return to in-person learning, debating whether or not to defy state orders.
It could be a lost year of learning, and that's not a compromise that we're willing to take.
Ultimately, some were given official waivers to resume in-person learning after meeting strict health and safety criteria. Meanwhile, the majority of schools valley-wide had kicked off the 2021 school year virtually.
Good morning, fifth graders!
In all three districts working tirelessly to make sure students had devices and internet for distance learning. Coachella Valley Unified School District putting internet hotspots on buses. Desert Sands Unified School District creating their own LTE network. At home, families creating their own virtual learning setups.
They know this is their space when they come to learn.
The year full of unprecedented problems, but also unprecedented solutions, collaboration, and creativity to somehow make it all work. Madison Weil, News Channel 3.
Hanging tough, those kids.
It's not easy.
No. Our special 2020, The Year in Coachella Valley, continues after the break.
And from the coronavirus pandemic to Black Lives Matter to the record-breaking wildfires right here in California, we are back with more next.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
The death of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police officers sparked a turning point in the fight for social justice.
Yeah, weeks, even months of street unrest followed nationwide.
Now, it was calmer here in the Coachella Valley, but just about every city saw peaceful vigils and protests. Riverside County issued a curfew on June 1st, just as hundreds of people took to the streets of Palm Desert. Businesses on El Paseo boarded up, and police were out in force. In the end, there were no arrests and no businesses were vandalized.
An artist also captured this moment in time, a memory of George Floyd. His vision is now on a wall for all to see in Palm Springs.
Two major events dominated politics in 2020, the presidential election and the coronavirus pandemic.
It was hard to separate them and their impacts. Here at home, Your Vote 2020 also took center stage with a number of local races. News Channel 3's Peter Dowd takes a look back.
2020 was one of the most remarkable political years in history. Here are some of the local highlights. In February, President Donald Trump made his first visit to the Coachella Valley since his election. Oracle CEO Larry Ellison hosted a sold-out fundraiser at his Rancho Mirage home. California's March 3rd primary led to a runoff election in California's 28th district in the state Senate. Republican Melissa Melendez later won the seat.
And I'm ready. I'm ready to get represented in the Senate.
As spring turned to summer, the economic stress of pandemic shutdowns started to simmer. These controversial messages appeared on the roof of Palm Desert Bar, the Red Barn.
The virus is a terrible thing. It needs to be taken care of. You got to, protect yourself. But at the same time, we have to be able to conduct business.
The owner defended the signs, which generated strong reactions on both sides. The national tension over racial justice was felt here at home as well. In July, Mayor Pro Tem Christy Holstage publicly criticized what she called a, quote, long history of racial segregation and exclusion in Palm Springs. The police union then backed her new challenger, a former Palm Springs City Councilman, Mike McCullough. The divided nation was visible in the Coachella Valley. As the election neared, supporters of both President Trump and Joe Biden held rallies throughout the valley. The pandemic forced changes to the election. Riverside County opened 130 voter assistance centers instead of its traditional 600 polling places, but most voters mailed in their ballots. On November 3rd, victory for incumbents in the valley, including Democratic Congressman Raul Ruiz. And in the state assembly, independent Chad Mays and Democrat Eduardo Garcia. Incumbent mayors kept their seats across the valley, including Linda Evans in La Quinta, Stephen Hernandez in Coachella, and Scott Mattis in Desert Hot Springs.
Congratulations on your reelection.
And in Palm Springs, Christy Holstage won her reelection. She's now the first female mayor in Palm Springs history and the first openly bisexual mayor in the nation. Peter Dowd, News Channel 3.
We turn now to News Channel 3's Jake Ingracia with more on the record-breaking California wildfire season this year.
Also major developments with some noteworthy crimes here in the desert.
From police tracking murder cases and shootings to firefighters battling those devastating wildfires, first responders had a year filled with both turmoil and triumph.
Any killing is bad, but this was not a particularly easy murder, if there is one. This was very bad.
In one of the biggest breaks in a years-old case for the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, 6 people were arrested and charged in the murders of Valley couple Jonathan Reynoso and Audrey Moran, who disappeared in May of 2017. The sheriff announcing these Coachella dig sites are somehow connected, and human skeletal remains were found and confirmed by DNA testing to belong to the victims. The accused appeared in court pleading not guilty, with a preliminary hearing now set for April. In February, a murder-suicide sent shockwaves through this Rancho Mirage Medical Center. Dr. David Duffner, a respected orthopedic surgeon, was shot by a 63-year-old Desert Hot Springs man who walked into the office and fired multiple times before turning the gun on himself. This employee was in the office next door when gunshots rang out.
He really, truly was a lovely man, and it was senseless.
On the fire front, a pair of out-of-control brush fires burned through tens of thousands of acres this year just west of the valley. Most recently, the El Dorado fire broke out near Yucaipa in September, sparked by a gender reveal party. Over 23 days, it burned more than 22,000 acres, taking the life of 39-year-old firefighter Charlie Morton. The Apple Fire broke out in late July in Cherry Valley. Fanned by furious winds, it ultimately charred more than 33,000 acres. The cause, investigators believe, was a faulty diesel truck.
All these homes, they shouldn't be standing, but they're still standing. Everything around them completely torched and leveled, but we're still here, so I feel good about that.
Firefighters narrowly avoiding catastrophe for thousands whose homes were saved. Jake Ingracia, News Channel 3.
Devastating.
It's amazing to see the recoveries.
It really is, yeah. And through the hardships of 2020, brought neighbors who gave back to their communities in the time of need.
A salute to them. It's still to come.
As we leave 2020 behind and look toward a new, brighter year, we're taking the time to remember some of the people who lifted humanity with their kindness. As Mr. Rogers said, look for the helpers.
Yeah, morning anchor Angela Chen takes a look at some of our local heroes of 2020.
Throughout the great crises of America, whatever the tragedy, in the aftermath, you can always find people helping. In the Coachella Valley, big hearts were only eclipsed by the gratitude in turn. Mario's Cafe has donated more than 20,000 meals and thousands of PPE during this pandemic. On top of that, every Monday they partner with groups to help those in need.
What I get inside here, you can't buy with every penny you make.
Meantime, what you get outside, priceless selflessness in the form of outdoor recreational vehicles. This year, as healthcare workers heightened their exposure by caring for infected COVID patients, the need for separation from their families became necessary. One local man is part of the group RVs for MDs, owners who lent their RVs to healthcare workers on the front lines so they can self-isolate.
We're definitely blessed to be able to go ahead and donate these RVs and help out, and that's what it's about. This time with all this going on, we need to be volunteers and help our communities.
And who can forget this real-life Mr. and Mrs. Santa Claus building toys for children year-round in their wood workshop. Mike and Judy Sullivan of Desert Hot Springs have already started the next batch of toys for Christmas 2021.
I always say that I do not sell toys, but if you can contribute to help me make more toys for next year, I appreciate that.
In a year when so much has gone awry, so many have opened their hearts and poured what they can back into the community. Because when the worst happens, the best of us emerge and light the way. In the Coachella Valley, Angela Chen, News Channel 3.
So many great stories from our neighborhood heroes throughout 2020.
Yeah, definitely. Those real heroes, Karen, are those who are on the front lines of the pandemic, both day and night. They're risking their lives to save others.
They sure are. The toll on healthcare workers on the front lines, unimaginable. The Palm Springs Air Museum taking to the skies to salute our local essential workers on their Frontline Fridays during the month of May.
And as we approach a new year, there's a light at the end of a very long and dark tunnel. The pandemic launched a global race for a vaccine, with Pfizer and Moderna already delivering in a historic less than a year's time. Vaccinations began this month, healthcare workers and nursing home residents being the first to get them.
Vaccine offers a practical pathway out of the pandemic.
And as we say goodbye tonight, a moment of silence to acknowledge the more than 300,000 American lives lost to coronavirus.
And thank you for joining us. This News Channel 3 special 2020, the year in Coachella Valley. We wish you a happy and healthy new year. Stay safe.